Hi everyone. Today's option is on characterization again, but today we're specifically going to focus on the techniques an author uses to create their characters. If you have any questions throughout this option, please write them down, and when you come back to class, please ask them. Chances are that if you have a question, one of your classmates has the same question, so don't be shy. Make sure to ask. Alright, so the first thing I want to talk about is building a character. How does an author show the traits of the character? And there are 5 major ways that an author can show the traits of that specific character. One is their physical characteristics, so what they look like. Can be important, sometimes not so important, but you want to have a visual of what the person looks like. Their point of view, right, how they feel about things is really key. What motivates them? What's happened to them maybe in the past to make them act the way that they do? All right, what motivates them? Their conflicts. Now, they could have internal conflicts, so some sort of conflict within themselves, or they could have an external conflict with other characters. And those conflicts will say a lot about who that character is. Lastly, their relationships with others is really important. You can tell a lot about a character based upon their relationships with other people. Whether they're good relationships, bad ones, it's all very important when an author starts thinking about building a character that people will remember and be able to hopefully connect with in some way. Now there are 5 writing techniques in the story that we're going to talk about, or 5 writing techniques that an author will use to develop a character. 1 is dialogue, so their conversations with other people. 2 is action, what those characters do. 3 is their thoughts and feelings, so how that character feels, if we can get into their head. 4, what other characters say about or to that character. Maybe what's said when the character can't hear them might be really important. And lastly, directly from the author. Sometimes the author just comes right out and tells you exactly what to think about that character. And that is a writing technique. It's not very subtle, but sometimes it does the trick. Okay. So there's 5 things to focus on with creating characters. So what the author tells us directly, dialogue, actions, what that character says and what they do, all very important. How they feel, their inner thoughts, depending on the kind of narrator you have. Sometimes you can actually get into that person's head. And lastly, again, what others say about or how they react to the character. Again, this is a review. These are the 5 things that an author focuses on when they're creating characters. And these are all things I want you to focus on and remember. What the author tells us directly, dialogue, actions, inner thoughts and feelings, and what others say about or how they react to the character. So direct characterization, let's do some examples. That's what the author tells us directly. Remember Story of an Hour? We read it a few weeks ago. Look at this first paragraph actually from the story. It says, knowing that Mrs. Mallard was afflicted with heart trouble, great care was taken to break to her as gently as possible the news of her husband's death. So right off the bat, directly the author says, hey, this character has heart trouble. She's kind of fragile. She has some kind of health issue. So we don't really have to infer really anything. We know right off the bat a very important detail about this character. So that's direct characterization. Here's an example from The Monkey's Paw, which we haven't read in entirety yet. It's been on some of your USA test prep quizzes though. As her husband entered the room, he was followed by a tall, burly man, beady of eye and rubicund of visage. Sergeant Major Morris, he said, introducing him. All right, so we have a physical description here, a tall, burly man with beady eyes and rubicund a visage, his face, is rubicund. So the author's telling us very directly what he looks like. Here's from the story we read on Monday, Farewell to Violet. The blue eyes started to water. Adria Myson. Don't you cry, Nicole ordered her reflection in the bathroom mirror. All right, so right away we have Nicole talking, and we get sort of direct characterization. She's telling herself not to cry. Secondly, remember we have dialogue, words spoken by the characters. Let's look at these two sections from Little Red Riding Hood. Which passage do you think gives you more interesting information about these characters? So hopefully you picked the second one because it is dialogue. It has a lot more examples. The first one really doesn't have much going on at all. Then there's actions. What a character does. Now, this is really important. There can be differences between what a character may say and what a character does. And those differences can say a lot about a character. Let's look at this section from The Monkey's Paw. It says, "Hark at the wind," said Mr. White, who, having seen a fatal mistake after it was too late, was amiably desirous of preventing his son from seeing it. "I'm listening," said the latter, grimly surveying the board as he stretched out his hand. "Check." "I should hardly think he'd come tonight," said his father, with his hand poised over the board. "Mate," replied the son. So you have this scene here of a father and a son. We don't know how old the son is, and they're playing chess. And the father, Mr. White, says, "Hark at the wind." So listen to the wind, is what he's saying. But there's a difference between what he's saying here and what he's actually doing, because while he's talking to his son and saying, "Hey, look at the wind," they're playing a game of chess. But he's realizing that he's made a mistake. He's seen a fatal mistake after it was too late, was amiably desirous of preventing his son from seeing it. So he's a little manipulative here. He's trying to get his son to pay attention to the weather and not to the game, because he's about to lose this game. So maybe not the nicest guy here. So his actions are like, "Oh, hey, look at the wind." And he's smiling. He's amiably desirous of preventing his son, like he's still really friendly, but his actions are suggesting that he's trying to kind of cheat so that his son doesn't win. So what he says and what he does is very different, and that can tell us a whole lot about a character. Inner thoughts and feelings are also really, really important. It's a very easy way for an author to share information about a character's true feelings and their personality when we can get into their head. Let's look at this picture here. So this is from the Cask of Amontillado, which we read a week ago. And that's told in the first person point of view of Montresor. And the first person can be really helpful in sharing information about that person because it's that person talking about themselves. So if you look at this picture here from the Cask of Amontillado, you got poor Fortunato over here with the jester's cap, all dressed up because it's Carnival, and Montresor looking very stately here with the candle, and they look really happy. I mean, they're just like smiling at each other. If you didn't know the story and you were just looking at the picture, you would think, okay, these guys are friends. And then we get the very beginning of the story, and it says, "It must be understood that neither by word nor deed had I given Fortunato cause to doubt my goodwill. I continued, as was my wont, to smile in his face, and he did not perceive that my smile now is at the thought of his immolation." So even in this picture, they're just smiling at each other. But we learn a whole lot about the narrator here, because it says that he is smiling at him, but his thoughts are on his immolation or his destruction. So he might be smiling, but what he's really thinking about is murdering him. So that's what's really going on here in this scene. And if we didn't get into Montresor's thoughts here, his evil thoughts, we wouldn't know that. So we learn a whole lot about the narrator, Montresor, through his inner thoughts. Okay, and then we're going to do a short video clip about what others say about someone or how they react to that character. Often a close look at other characters' reactions to the character can help the reader get a better picture of that character. So I want you to listen closely to what the other characters say about Aunt Fanny here. You're about to watch a clip. What kind of person do you think she is?